So I went to this meeting, and there were these women talking about their lives as I had never imagined people could.
Well, you need to be specially trained to be a housewife. You get married, there are a whole new set of rules. We still have to look a certain way and be a certain way, but there's a whole lot more to do.
We went around the room, and people asked a very simple question. How would your life have been different if you had been a boy?
Why you think being a woman might limit you as a human being, your possibilities, you know?
Welfare people and whatnot.
We challenged concepts of masculinity. We challenged concepts of femininity. We talked about skin color, how young black women would put cream on in order to make themselves light-skinned.
Suddenly, everything was up for questioning. Women did all of the family and housework and cooking, and the men got to make the living and get all of the attention in the world. Why was that?
Like, we don't even realize what goes on until we sit and compare with other women.
And we heard each other. We heard each other into speech. You could sense it, you could feel it, you could cut it with a knife, as they say. The room was electric with whatever was going to be shared.
So I said, I've had 3 abortions, and the last one was within the last year. And I started to cry because I suddenly understood that I wasn't alone, that what I had considered personal embarrassment was something that was part of this whole larger experience.
The big insight of the women's movement was the personal is political. Problems that you felt were happening to you alone, probably were your fault. But if it's happening to other people, then it's a social problem and not just a personal problem.
America seemed like the perfect place to demonstrate the way women were just judged as sex objects, just judged by their looks. There were no such standards for men. We also recognized how racist those beauty standards were. We weren't going to have any of it. It was, all women are beautiful. That was one of our slogans. All women are beautiful.
We had a freedom trash can. Guys were burning their draft cards. We would burn our bras and other instruments of female torture.
No more pain, no more trying to hold them back in vain.
Even though I was in now, I was always with the radicals. If they're going to demonstrate for Miss America, I'm going to be there.
Women use your brains, not your bodies.
It was a blast, what can I say? It was very exciting. It was something now wouldn't do.
As feminists, what we believe in is very simple, and that is the social, economic, and political equality of the sexes. Because the relationship between the sexes is, in fact, a political relationship. We're an oppressed group, and we have been through history.
The motto, the personal is political. But when you were a lesbian and you wanted to talk about lesbian relationships as opposed to heterosexual relationships, they didn't want to hear about it.
Middle-class white women to have any conception about what was going on in communities of color. And those differences could have been in conversation with each other, but if there isn't even an acknowledgement that there's differences in experience and perspective, and the voice of one is used as the voice of all, then you have a problem.
That was during a period when black women did not particularly identify with the women's movement.
Mrs. Norton, why are you, a black woman, involved in women's liberation?
I'm involved in the struggle for women's rights because I believe women are disadvantaged. Black women are no less than white women. Indeed, black women far more than white women. Women who have spent their lives working in other women's kitchens have a different kind of handicap than women who have been oppressed for their sex in other ways.
A friend mentioned that his sister was pregnant and nearly suicidal. Could I do anything about it? And I was referred through a series of connections to a doctor. Asked him if he would perform an abortion. He said yes, and a few weeks later someone else called and said they also were looking for an abortion. The word had spread. And at that point, I decided to set up a bit of a system. I was living in a dormitory at the time, and so I told people to ask for Jane.
One really good abortionist taught Janes how to do abortions with skill and care, and then those Janes taught other Janes. All of us were always aware that what we were doing was illegal, that we could go to jail. You might have to throw everything in your bag and run down the back stairs at any moment. But we understood that it was important work, useful work, necessary work.
Well, tomorrow, 50 years after we gave them the vote, the women are going to strike to support their liberation demands. Thankfully, Cedar Rapids' women's liberation movement is pretty much dormant.
If I knew what they were going on strike for, I'd be able to answer.
No, I don't believe I will. I don't think that's necessary at all.
I don't think too much of it. A woman's place is in the home.
So remember, men, if you come to work tomorrow and your secretary refuses to do the filing and then go home and find that your wife has refused to do the cooking, don't blame them. Remember, you gave them the vote 50 years ago. This is Mike Scott, male chauvinist, TV9 Eyewitness News.
Betty Friedan tells the press 50,000 women would march in New York City. Every week we would have a notice in the Village Voice. These younger women, they would pour into Now, and we would plan this march and strike.
Don't iron while the strike is hot was the slogan, and we took this poster and distributed it all over town.
And I said, how are we going to get 50,000 to march? March. I was walking towards Fifth Avenue scared to death that I was going to see only 3,000. And I will never, never forget. You couldn't see the end of the line.
When you looked out at everybody, I mean, there were women as far as you could see.
People were cheering us. They hung out of the windows and out of balconies and cheered us on and waved flags for us.
Putting their fingers up like this. And we now know that we have the power to unite together, to work together, to make the changes that are needed. And that we have your attention, and that we have the headlines in the media. You didn't make us. We're making you take us seriously.
It felt like we had triumphed. Felt like we were changing the world. Now we are a movement.